Alright, let's name the loop and then start tracing its gears. The control loop exposed. Let's call this thing what it actually is. The discipline, cortisol, compliance loop. It's a cycle that starts when you feel a threat, whether that's a looming deadline, a falling number, or just a silent comparison to someone else. Your internal script fires off immediately, telling you to tighten up and push harder without asking any questions. You get a temporary performance spike because stress chemistry works like rocket fuel, but then the inevitable crash hits. You end up wired and tired, so you blame yourself and promise to exert even more control tomorrow, which just resets the entire loop. Pressure leads to a spike, then a crash, then shame, which makes you recommit even harder until you eventually forget who is actually in charge of your life. You need to label the gears of this machine so you can hear them click into place. The trigger is anything your system tags as a threat, like inbox pings, calendar blocks, or even the thought of not being productive enough. Once the trigger pulls, your script tells you to tighten your posture, your breath goes shallow, and your jaw clenches up. Your mind narrows down to urgent binaries where you either win or fail, and it feels like everything has to happen right now or never. The reward for all this is just a bit of narrow relief when you knock out 3 easy tasks to clear a microcliff of anxiety. You get a tiny dopamine pat on the head, but the cost is a total loss of self because you trade real meaning for a quick hit of feeling busy. Cognitively speaking, this loop shrinks your entire world down to a tiny point. Your tunnel vision locks onto whatever reduces your anxiety the fastest instead of focusing on what actually matters most. You start following rules so intensely that you stop noticing if they even fit your life anymore, and you develop a massive aversion to anything new. New paths feel way too risky to a brain that is biased toward threats, so you start worshipping consistency and calling it character, while your curiosity literally starves to death. The physical signs of this are incredibly easy to spot if you know what to look for. You'll notice a clenched jaw, shoulders creeping up toward your ears, and eyes fixed in a hard stare. You might catch yourself holding your breath between emails or feeling your stomach tighten up at 10 in the morning. Even food stops being something you enjoy and turns into mere fuel because pausing to actually taste something feels unsafe when you're under the script. Here is the double bind that keeps you stuck in the mud. If you succeed at your tasks, you stay trapped because the relief you earn just reinforces the idea that the script works. Your brain thinks the whip is the only way to get results, so it keeps the whip out and ready for next time. If you fail, you just double down on the grind and bind yourself even tighter to the process. Either way, the loop wins the day and you lose your autonomy. The wildest part is that this loop can actually make you look like a high-functioning superstar. Bosses absolutely love it because your calendar is full, your metrics are glowing, and you respond to every message without ever flinching. Meanwhile, the actual human part of you that asks, why, goes completely mute. That silence is the real cost of the operation, and it's really just obedience wearing a much better brand of clothing. Now, don't get me wrong, I am definitely not anti-discipline. Discipline is a fantastic tool when used correctly, but discipline without sovereignty is just obedience with a better PR team. The loop swaps out your personal why for an external must, and then it tries to convince you that the knot in your chest is proof that you care. It is basically like carrying a loud fire alarm in your pocket and trying to use it as a compass. You can hear the loop talking if you listen to the words you use. Urgency is everywhere, with phrases like have to, must, and can't stop dominating your internal monologue. Binary thinking takes over, making you believe that you either go hard or you are fundamentally weak. Invisible rules start to creep in, telling you that mornings must be optimized and rest is a dessert you only get after enough pain. None of that is actually a law of nature, but it feels like one because cortisol makes certainty feel like the only safe harbor. You probably recognize the micro-stories that play out every single day. You open your laptop and see 10 tabs, so you go for the easiest email just to feel competent for a second. You promise yourself you'll do the deep, important work after a few small wins. But then the clock jumps 3 hours ahead. Or maybe you lay down at night with a brain that is still sprinting, so you swear that tomorrow you'll finally be disciplined. You set a 5 a.m. alarm and wake up already braced for impact, repeating the same cycle over again. That isn't a lack of willpower. That is the loop functioning exactly how it was designed. This is where things get really tricky, because the loop fuses your identity to your sense of safety. I am disciplined eventually becomes I am safe, which makes stopping to ask if a task is worth your life force feel like a dangerous move. Your body treats your own autonomy like a threat, because being independent might mean changing the rules. In a world biased toward threats, changing the rules feels like you're asking for punishment, and that is the ultimate trap. While all of this is happening, your metrics are slowly turning into mirrors of your self-worth. Things like streaks, dashboards, and reaching inbox zero become surrogate threat signals that keep you on edge. A broken streak pings the same part of your brain as a social snub, so you aren't actually chasing meaning anymore. You are just dodging a digital flinch, and the loop absolutely loves that you've outsourced your peace of mind to a progress bar. I've seen the moment everything changes for the people I work with, and it usually starts with a simple realization. The first time they stopped on purpose in the middle of a stress flinch and named it out loud, they said, "I'm in threat bias, not truth." The spell didn't break forever, but the gears finally got noisy enough to notice. Once you can actually hear the machine running, you gain the power to interrupt it. Let's look at the stakes in plain terms, because they are higher than you think. If you stay in the loop, you might hit your output goals, but you will also flatten your entire inner life. Creativity requires slack and varied input, both of which are strictly banned by the loop. Your relationships will start to sour, because resentment always grows in the places where boundaries have died. The moral injury you get from saying yes when your body is screaming no doesn't leave a very pretty scar. We need to make this machine visible so we can dismantle it. The loop is a simple machine that follows a predictable path. A threat cue lights up in your environment. Your body braces, and your mind narrows down. Quick action earns you a small hit of relief. A crash follows the temporary high. Shame recruits you for even more grinding. The cycle repeats. You cannot fix this problem by adding more grind to the equation. You fix it by regaining the rights to decide your own state of being. First, you have to map out the machine and see how it works. Then, you have to learn how to touch the brakes without feeling a mountain of guilt. Finally, you have to rewire what actually counts as a win in your book. We will get there, but if this is the machine, we have to ask who built the casing in the first place. Neuroscience, how the loop locks in. To understand why this loop has such a tight grip on your life, we really need to look under the hood at the biology. When your system tags something as a threat, your HPA axis kicks into gear and your cortisol levels start to rise. Norepinephrine sharpens your signals and gets your body ready to move right this second. Short bursts of this are totally fine, but if you keep that chemistry humming all day, the cost shows up in the prefrontal cortex. That part of your brain starts to brown out, and while you can still function, your ability to think long-term or switch tasks gets throttled. You end up defaulting to whatever habits or rules are already cached in your system, usually someone else's priorities. Here is the funny thing about how your brain works in this state. It starts assigning way more weight to any signal that promises to reduce the threat quickly. This means that punishment-based learning takes the lead, and you remember what helped you avoid pain rather than what helped you build meaning. If you miss a deadline once while you're stressed, that memory burns into your brain forever. If you have a deep, creative session under that same stress load, your brain doesn't tag it as safe enough to repeat. The loop quietly shifts your entire aim from what matters to what keeps me from getting hit. Your habit circuits absolutely love consistency when you are in a state of high arousal. The pathways in your basal ganglia will always pick the most reliable action that costs the least amount of energy. That is a great system when you are trying to avoid a tiger in the woods, but it is terrible when you are trying to navigate uncertainty. The system steers you towards short-term tasks that offer quick relief, like clearing an inbox instead of inventing something new. Because cortisol biases your attention toward what is narrow and known, anything novel starts to feel like a heavy tax on your system. When you add that prefrontal brownout into the mix, you get a very specific mental profile. Your working memory trims down, which makes juggling complex steps feel much heavier than it should. Your cognitive flexibility dips, so you find yourself clinging to the first answer you find. Your inhibitory control weakens, just enough that you let one more email slip past the gate, even when you know you should stop. You aren't broken. Your brain is just doing triage to preserve fuel by picking the cheapest patterns available. Now we have to layer your identity on top of all that biology. Under chronic stress, your brain starts to tie the idea of safety to the idea of predictability. If being disciplined has historically prevented you from being punished, your system fuses those two things together. This is why any move that loosens that discipline, like taking a break or questioning a goal, feels like actual danger. The guilt you feel when you stop isn't moral data. It's just a body alarm wired to a survival tag. Social mirrors make this whole situation even worse than it already is. Metrics, streaks, and leaderboards act like surrogate signals from your tribe that tell you whether you belong. If you break a streak, your nervous system treats it like a social threat or a red notification dot. These peripheral cues add up over time, from read receipts to delivery pings, and they keep your HPA axis from ever settling down. You never actually return to a baseline of calm, so the mental brownout never fully clears. There is also the issue of tolerance, where the relief hits start to fade the more you repeat them. The same micro-win that used to make you exhale now feels weak, so you up the effort to chase that same feeling of ease. This is basically the hedonic treadmill, but wearing survival clothes. The more you rely on the grind for relief, the more grind you need just to feel okay. Eventually, your system normalizes high arousal as your default state, which is why actual calm can feel like boredom or even a threat at first. Another piece of the puzzle that most people miss is something called default mode rigidity. When you are under stress, the background storytelling in your mind gets incredibly sticky and hard to change. Rumination loops and self-critique start to escalate, and you find yourself playing out future catastrophes on loop. This steals all the mental bandwidth you need for creative thinking, so you push even harder to compensate. That extra push feeds the same chemistry that killed your creativity in the first place, allowing the loop to protect itself. From a learning perspective, this punishment-first bias changes how you receive feedback from the world. Critical comments start to punch way above their weight class, while subtle praise just slides right off of you. You begin to optimize your life to avoid heat instead of pursuing your craft, which completely skews your practice. You start stacking easy reps where you won't be judged, and avoiding the risky work where you would actually grow. Consistency might look strong from the outside, but it is entirely fear-shaped underneath the surface. The physical signatures we talked about earlier aren't just random accidents of anatomy. Shallow breathing reduces your carbon dioxide levels, which can make your focus feel tight and incredibly urgent. When you have a tunnel vision gaze, it signals a threat to your midbrain and keeps the loop spinning. A tight jaw or rigid hands broadcast a brace signal to your entire nervous system, which limits your motor output. That is exactly why your typing might feel crisp and fast, but the actual writing feels wooden and lifeless. Does stress ever actually help you get things done? Sure, in short bursts, acute stress can sharpen your execution for a specific task. But chronic, unbounded stress will eventually melt the executive systems you need to remain sovereign over your life. If your day never allows your chemistry to downshift, you will keep picking the safest next action and calling it discipline. The loop becomes self-justifying because you can point to your output and say, "See, I'm productive," while your capacity for choice slowly withers away. Here is the checkpoint you need to carry forward as we move through this. If your wins only happen when you are physically braced for impact, your brain is learning that being braced is the only way to be effective. That specific lesson is what locks the loop into place. To unlock it, you need proof that being calm can also deliver wins, and you need tools to catch the threat bias before it drives your next choice. Your biology is actually ready for that shift. It just needs a different set of reps to get there. Since this wiring didn't just appear out of nowhere, we have to ask how it got trained on such a massive scale. Who exactly built the casing that keeps feeding your nervous system these constant cues? To understand why your body thinks compliance is the same thing as safety, we have to look back at the people who designed the mirrors you've been staring into. Origins, where this frame came from. To understand how this pressure got into your bones, we've got to watch how the machine was built. It all started with early behaviorism setting the mold. Back in the day, John Watson wanted psychology to be strictly about what you could see and shape in a person. Then Skinner took that idea even further, arguing that all behavior is just a function of consequences. His logic was simple. You reinforce the stuff you want and you extinguish the stuff you don't. It was clean, it was testable, and for factory owners, it was absolute gold. No inner life was required for this model, just a steady stream of inputs and outputs. Later on, guys like Carver and Shire wrapped this in fancy feedback language where you set a standard, measure the gap, act to reduce it, and then measure again. That loop didn't stay tucked away in university labs for long because managers everywhere grabbed it and ran. Industrial management, in the early 1900s, was already completely obsessed with throughput. Taylorism had workers timed down to the very second, and behaviorism finally gave leaders a science-wide frame to build environments that shaped human actions. Companies started rolling out quotas, piece rates, time clocks, and visual boards to track every move. Output became the ultimate virtue in the workplace. If the needle on the chart moved, you were considered good. But if you missed the mark, you felt the heat. The loop we just mapped out, threat cue, tighten up, and then relief, was now officially embedded in the average workday. Meanwhile, World War II turned factory production into a matter of national survival. Factories ran non-stop while posters told everyone to do your part. And that's when the moral frame fused permanently with the metric. After the war ended, that high-pressure frame didn't just relax, it professionalized. Organizational behavior management grew rapidly in the 1950s and 60s, applying those same reinforcement tricks to sales, safety, and corporate compliance. The basic play was always the same. Define the target behaviors, track them, reward the hits, and punish the misses. They used training films, badges, and leaderboards, which were really just early versions of the dashboards living on your phone right now. Social influence research added even more pressure from a different angle by proving that surveillance plus salience makes people comply. If you know you're being watched and the rule is loud, you're going to follow it. Now just swap the word boss for app and tell me that isn't exactly what's happening in your notification bar. Here's the funny thing. As corporate America scaled this system up, the self-help industry stepped in to sell it back to you as a character trait. The late 1900s were packed with books that basically moralized productivity. The message was everywhere. Work harder to be a better person, wake up earlier to be worthy of success, and sacrifice everything now to earn peace later. Every moment of stalling was framed as a personal weakness rather than a signal from your body. Guilt did all the heavy lifting in this era. If you weren't hitting your numbers, the gurus told you that you lacked will, not air to breathe. So you tripled down on effort instead of agency, and eventually physical and mental pain got rebranded as progress. Then the app economy took all that moral energy and turned it into lines of software code. We got streaks, badges, red dots, and red receipts, which are all just microdopamine hits designed to pull you through microtasks. The same negative feedback architecture. Compare, correct, and compare again, now lived right in your pocket, buzzing at you all day long. Hustle culture in the 2010s wrapped the whole thing in a specific aesthetic involving grind reels, sleep shaming, and gaining status from pure exhaustion. Rise and grind wasn't just a catchy motto, it became a full-blown identity costume for people to wear. People started flexing their own depletion as proof of their worth. And well, no kidding, the nervous system learned that being braced is the only way to stay safe. Meanwhile, something else was happening on the margins of power that we shouldn't ignore. Governments and intelligence outfits were very interested in the mechanics of behavior control. The specifics of those programs are messy and often pretty ugly, but the documented thrust of the research was clear. Environment and cues can steer people wherever you want them to go. Sensory load, sleep patterns, and constant signals are the things that shape human compliance. Now, I'm not saying your favorite to-do app is some secret PsyOp. I am saying the broader culture learned, very publicly, that humans are incredibly cue-driven. And the most profitable products of the last 20 years have been built specifically to be those cues. Workplaces followed suit as KPI boards replaced the old idea of quiet craft. Open offices were designed to maximize visible compliance, so everyone could see who was working. Email became a 24/7 pipeline of micro-threats, filled with pings you can't unsee and clocks you can't stop. Even the promise of flexible work usually just meant flexible intrusion into your private life. If you were reachable, you were expected to be reachable at all times. The loop never got a chance to wind down because the digital mirrors never blinked. Every new tool promised to boost productivity, using the same old lever. Make the gaps louder, shrink the relief down to a few clicks, and keep you in constant motion. Here's the subtle pivot that finally sealed the deal. Freedom itself got rebranded as the need to maximize throughput. Don't want a boss? Fine, be your own boss, and then whip yourself twice as hard. Autonomy started to mean you chose the grind, not that you actually chose the aim of your life. Gig platforms crown people with independence, while paying them by the task and rating their performance by the second. Creator tools sold the dream of liberation, then tied your actual income to daily streaks and watch time. Even wellness culture snuck in compliance by telling you to track your sleep or you failed at recovery. It's basically like trading one manager for 12 tiny ones living inside your phone. So you grew up inside a system that taught your body the same lesson from 10 different angles. Being good equals output under watch. Missing a goal equaled heat from the system. The language shifted over time to words like optimize, level up, or stay consistent. But your nervous system didn't care about the vocabulary. It recognized the underlying pattern of a threat cue, a physical tighten, and then a brief moment of relief. The loop didn't need a specific villain to keep it going, because it had architecture. What nobody bothered to tell you was the actual cost of living this way. When every gap in your performance is made to feel loud, your natural curiosity goes quiet. When you're being rated every single hour, taking a risk starts to feel lethal to your career. When relief is just a click away, the search for meaning, which requires wandering and failure, looks like a dangerous waste of time. And when discipline is just how you keep the heat off your back, you'll eventually confuse compliance with actual character. This is exactly why your body thinks compliance is the same thing as safety. History trained it to feel that way. Industry scaled the process, software personalized it, and the culture praised it. So of course stopping feels wrong to you. Of course trying something new feels like a heavy tax on your energy. You were never broken to begin with. You were just very well trained. Okay, but how does all that training turn into your daily nervous system script? Let's name the 6 moves modern self-control runs through your day. The 6 scripts of modern self-control. And watch how they steer your choice. Script 1 is threat priming, which is when you start the day with a whip instead of a plan. You wake up, glance at your phone, and boom, you're hit with unread emails, red dots, and someone already posting their big wins for the day. Your system tags a threat before you've even stood up out of bed. The inner script snaps on, telling you to hurry because you're behind and you need to fix it right now. So you skip the part where you sense how you're feeling and sprint straight into tasks you didn't even choose. Here's the funny thing. None of those digital cues actually asked you to panic. But your body learned that panic is what moves the needle. So the day begins in a braced state, and choice doesn't even get a vote. Script 2 is micro-avoidance, where you take on tasks that look easy so you can stack up some quick wins. You tell yourself you're just building momentum, but really, you're just buying anxiety relief on a layaway plan. You check the inbox, send Slack replies, make tiny edits, and do some calendar cleanup. You feel busy, safer, and competent for a moment while the big, important thing sits there like a live wire you're afraid to touch. So you promise yourself you'll touch it after just 3 small wins. But the clock slides and the wins multiply because each one shaves the edge off the threat. It's basically like eating saltines when you're starving. It feels like food for a second, until it doesn't. Script 3 is the shame bribe, where you promise yourself peace after pain and then move the goalpost. You say that if you finish this one block of work, you'll finally let yourself rest. You crush the block, but the relief window slams shut because a new gap in your productivity starts screaming even louder. You tell yourself a story that real professionals don't stop here. So you add 5 more minutes, then 10, then you decide you'll just rest tonight. That rest eventually becomes a mix of doom scrolling and guilt. The bribe works because your nervous system believes relief is something earned by compliance, not something granted by choice. So peace becomes a carrot that just keeps hopping away. Script 4 is monotony worship, which is when you confuse pure stamina for mastery and end up crushing your own curiosity. You lock into the same reps, the same tools, and the same cadence because novelty pings your internal threat sensors. Consistency feels like a virtue, so you spend your life grinding in straight lines, even though learning requires variation, and craft needs a bit of wobble. Without any novelty, your brain stops updating its model of the world, and you just get faster at doing the wrong thing. Well, no kidding, the work starts to feel flat after a while. You've taught your system that anything new equals danger, and the result is a tight output with incredibly shallow growth. Script 5 is metric idolatry, where you chase the numbers and ignore the actual meaning of the work. You start serving the dashboard by tracking streaks, counts, hours worked, calories burned, steps, and views. Numbers are clean and objective, so they feel more true than your own intuition. You optimize your entire life just to make those charts happy. But the weird part is how fast your actual purpose slides off the table. The metric becomes the mission, and the mission becomes don't break the metric. When a number dips, it punches your threat circuits, and the loop snaps tight again. You trade one thoughtful, slow choice for 10 quick ones that make the chart smile. And while your life looks busy, your work forgets why it exists. Script 6 is self-betrayal light, which is when you say yes even though your body is screaming no. You feel the tight throat, the heavy chest, and the not this feeling, but you override it because the calendar says it's important. Maybe a leader asked for a favor, or you just fear being seen as soft by your peers. These little betrayals happen daily, and while they look polite on the surface, they really start to add up. Each one teaches your system that your inner signals can't be trusted. Over time, you stop hearing them entirely until they start screaming in the form of headaches, back pain, or sudden rage. The loop frames those as personal failures, asks for more grit, and you just nod because that's the script. Watch how these 6 scripts play together by the hour to keep you trapped. Threat priming sets the initial brace for the day, while micro-avoidance burns through your daylight while keeping your anxiety just low enough to function. The shame bribe stretches your work sessions past the honest edge of your energy. Monotony worship removes any novelty, so you don't have to feel fear, which unfortunately stalls your learning. Metric idolatry supplies a constant stream of surrogate threat cues to keep you moving forward. Self-betrayal finally seals the deal because even when you notice the cost, you override the feeling to maintain compliance. They aren't just separate habits. They are one single nervous system strategy with 6 different faces. These are matters of stakes, not just abstract theory. These scripts make you reliable, fast, and praised by the system, right up until the moment they make you brittle. Your curiosity dries up, and your sense of humor leaves the building. You begin to resent people who aren't braced like you are. You can't even land and relax after work because your body equates stillness with failure. Your sleep gets cut, your mornings start out harsher, and the only way you know how to feel okay is to push even harder. That is the loop celebrating its victory over you.